Good morning and welcome to our Westernacher webinar, and thank you all for joining. Let me shortly introduce myself. My name is Lisa Kaiser and I'm your host today. So in today's webinar, we would like to present how to implement your own home delivery service with SAP in months, not in years. And your experts today are Alexander Bender and Tom Bjornstad from Westernacher. And before we start, let me provide you some important information. This webinar will be recorded and publicly accessible. And if you want to raise any questions, please use the Q&A section and put your questions anytime directly in the Q&A window. And we will all collect these and our experts will answer them after the presentation. And on the right side of your window, you will find the handout section in your toolbar. Here you can download the presentation and some more related material. And in case you have any organizational questions, please feel free to contact me privately via the chat window. And now I'd like to hand over to my colleague, Alexander.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Alexander Bender, and I am with my colleague Tom Bjornstad. This morning will lead you through our webinar. As Lisa just mentioned, we're going to talk today about how to implement your own home delivery service with SAP in 90 days. As you heard before, Tom already said good morning, but I'll give him a moment in a moment to introduce himself. My name, as I said, was Alexander Bender. I've been with Westernacher for 12 years now, and my role at Westernacher is that I'm the global industry lead for retail, wholesale, and consumer goods. And in this role, I've been working on this topic probably for the last 3 to 4 years now. Tom, if you want to introduce yourself briefly.
Yeah, my name is, thank you, Alexander. My name is Tom Bjornstad. Been in Westernacher for around nearly 3 years. Have in total around 18 years experience with e-commerce, using SAP system as a backend solutions to support online e-commerce and retail solutions.
Great, thank you. What we're going to do today is that we talk a little bit as introductory about what consumers are really are looking for, what do they want. Then we're going to talk briefly as an overview about 3 steps to get to home delivery, and, followed by the really getting into the details of what it takes to implement home delivery with SAP. And then we'll round that up with an example of how this has actually already been done in the past, and then come to our offer today. What are we suggesting you can do? What are your options, and how we would get started? All right, so undeniable, and a lot of this material had already been prepared before we hit the Corona pandemic, because the trend was clear. More and more home deliveries, it was growing steadily, while not maybe at a very high rate, but obviously since the pandemic hit, the need and the request for home delivery has skyrocketed. And so there was already quite a bit of movement over the last years to offer more and more home delivery services. And as you can see, big companies all were investing more and more into home deliveries and home delivery capabilities. So what is it, what consumers are demanding? First of all, speed. Consumers want fast deliveries, not many days from today, but they want it, especially when we talk about grocery, they want it today, maybe tomorrow. And obviously the likes of Amazon have fueled this trend to faster and faster services. However, on the flip side also, they are frustrated when companies have long delivery times and can't serve them quickly. Quality in the sense of professionalism of the delivery person is important. If you want to click on, got to speed up a little bit now. And the last one is what we summarized as service. It's just the ability of being able to to know what's happening and to be in the know and to have visibility. Track and trace comes into mind, but on the consumer level. That's been, if somebody noticed already, that was, so to speak, old news. But what's still valid and what's more and more coming up is that consumers are also willing to pay premium from that. So 52% of consumers are willing to pay more for speed and efficiency, to have the delivery when they want it. 73% prefer receiving a delivery at a convenient time slot. And this is really where it becomes also interesting for what we're going to show later on, is just the ability to link that willingness to pay with your capacity in transportation. 86% of consumers are willing to pay also for overall better experience. So if you look at your competition, if you look around, the free delivery doesn't really exist. It does cost money. And if you do put more quality into your delivery, you can charge customers for it because customers are willing to pay for better quality. And then the last point is, what is really important to understand is that consumers will share all their positive experience and with family and friends, creating more demand for those services. So how are you doing with last mile capabilities? Where are you? We got to put together some leading questions for this area, and we've, if you want to pull up all three already, we've divided them into three categories: purchase, delivery, and post-delivery, and they all matter. So when we talk about home delivery, that doesn't just start with the home delivery, but it starts already at the point of purchase. Not always online, depending on the sub-industry, but most of the time, it's obviously your ability to link your home deliveries with your web shop, and can you offer, for example, single delivery for multiple orders? How short are your delivery windows? What factors can you consider for delivery scheduling, and so on? Then most of the question will obviously center around the delivery itself. So can you accommodate order changes during the home delivery? Can your consumer easily change delivery dates, and so on? But it doesn't end there. We also look into post-delivery in order to capture how the delivery actually worked, sentiment, feedback, corrections, maybe any kind of refunds as well. We also understand that the capabilities are different for the type of retail you actually have. So kind of the extremes that we're looking at is on the one hand side, appliances and furnitures, white goods, heavy bulk, which have different needs for capabilities in home delivery than, for example, groceries, which are kind of on the other end. Groceries I need to have tomorrow, today, maybe even better. I have recipes that I follow, so I need a certain completeness. There's dependencies between items that have to come. I have to consider recycling deposits. I have to look at really collaborating with the consumer in order to make sure that he or she can receive the items. However, compared to furniture and appliances, I don't necessarily have a consumer to be there, except, and here we go again with a specialty, I have delivery restrictions. For example, alcohol, tobacco products, and so on, where I have to have separate sign-off requirements. Tobacco, for example, in the US would be 18 years, alcohol 21 years. In different countries, different requirements that we all need to consider. So when we talk about getting started and what the process is for implementing your own home delivery service, we really look at three different steps that are important. First of all, it's the integration. I mentioned already one earlier on, and Tom will in a moment go into the details much more. Integrating your web shop with SAP TM, but also with SAP EWM, and possibly your backend ERP system, ideally SAP ECC. Secondly, optimizing your transportation processes in order to maximize fleet utilization and optimizing vehicle routing, all in the pursuit of being able to deliver at the requested time and reacting efficiently to any kind of problems. And lastly, what we call enabling. This really focuses on the service thought that I mentioned earlier. So tracking the drivers, having interactions if there are any issues between drivers and consumers, but also between drivers and the operational center, and maybe even the operation center and consumers, all to make sure that the consumer receives the products as efficiently as possible. All right, and with that, I'll hand over to Tom, who's going to go into much more of the details now. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexander. So a little bit high level first before we come into one of our examples, which is the market.no application built some time back. So it all starts with some integration principles across the systems internally, at least for sharing the master data. In some classical solutions, we will have to use the CIF or the core interface to do this. In a newer platform environment on S4, we will have data replication framework used, and this is to transfer and have the master data distributed across the different systems, EWM, TM, which will require this from an S4 perspective, also shipping points and plant. So there are some internal principles that needs to be taken care of and aligned in a scope like this. From the order management perspective, there are some ways to deploy this through a web order integration scenario. You can do it via the classical ERP part on the SD order or a delivery, integrated via iDoc or some other technology that you use from your front end, or you can do the last option, which is direct delivery coming into EWM directly, and then it will be a reversed document flow more or less. And because we are from the TM side a little bit dependent on having the sales orders replicated via the ERP system or S4. And from the order management perspective part, there are some delivery dates that we need to come in, because in most cases we are planning towards the time slot, the ship from, ship to location. Are important objects for us, of course, the line items themselves. I see also the tendencies for grocery online that an average order is between 30 and 40 line items. So there is a lot of products in there. You can have value-added services if you are coming into the other areas, which Alexander was mentioning. So these are some high-level drawings of integration. You can use the ERP or ECC to receive the order or delivery, or you can have the direct option of direct deliveries to EWM, but you need to do a reverse synchronization up to TM for doing the actual planning of things. So these are ways that we have deployed solutions over time now, starting with classical ECC integrations, having a delivery or sales order first, and now in the last year we see more trends of direct delivery being the requested way of integration. Coming more into the transportation planning, there are options to do it manually. It is a tough way of working since most of these operations have a very late cutoff during the night, and the actual warehouse and transportation planning is done as a final plan into midnight or past midnight, and all the warehouse activities goes during the night for starting the execution. So we are depending on the street level more or less routing and scheduling, so that we plan in very highly detailed level, and then meaning you are depending on a GIS service to use to do and enable the distance duration calculations, especially to be able to optimize your population of orders relative to your customer fulfillment center. Time slots is a very useful constraint to use because you are trying to keep the customer promise. So you'll do mostly your optimization based on the time window, delivery windows requested by the customer, meaning 1 hour slot, 2 hour slots, 3 hour slot. The combination of different time slots is also very optimum for the optimizer to be able to create useful, good, dense routes. If you only operate with 1 hour time slots, you will see a underutilization of your vehicles due to the distance you need to travel between customers in some cases. So having the ability to offer a variance in time slot duration will provide you denser routes. There are options in after transportation planning to do a delivery creation to ERP, requesting that if you are using the sales order as a planning object. If you are using the delivery, it's already created. If you do the direct delivery creation to EWM, it's already existing as an order object. You're more flexible to last-minute changes. We'll touch a little bit about the transportation unit, which in some cases has been used to group the deliveries, meaning you do that by sending the transportation unit creation request to EWM, where the load sequence is then delivered and the yard departure time, which also then pick waves are planned and executed backwards from that timestamp for next day execution or that execution that you are planning for. To release your waves early enough to be able to do and fulfill your picking. Now we're coming more into the transport execution. POD updates are of course important, but from the enabling part, we in cases see the request and requirements for having a driver app, also for pickup locations, a similar app, but you do basically a check-in, check-out. Additionally, meaning you open the site, you are preparing it for receiving today's goods, and then you are sending an event saying that you're ready to start the handover, and then you do the actual physical re-delivery from customers as they come along to do the pickup locations. For the actual last mile, the driver app can be used as a guidance tool for the drivers if you're relying on students or part-time employees. To do your last mile execution. It is then basically doing navigations. It handles the process, POD on behalf of the customer that we have seen in some requirements, meaning you can leave the goods in an interaction with the client agreeing to leave it on the doorstep or in the garage. You have the social control ID check process in case you're having tobacco and alcohol. And you have the exception cases, for example, a 10-year-old boy opens the door, the mother and father has ordered normal grocery goods, but also alcohol and tobacco, and that has to be removed, and you can then trigger exception management process to handle that because you're not fulfilling the delivery. So from a transportation settlement perspective, in this case that we are going to touch, no third-party or external fleet is used, it's just internal. So the transportation charge calculations here are very small. You are having a running cost, which is calculated. It is a kilometric rate plus some other costs calculated into that, and then a driver cost for the hourly run times they have throughout the day, 4 hours, 5 hours, 6, 7, 8 hours. So that's the only element of charges used in this case. The interaction with TM and EWM, as I mentioned, it is the transportation unit transfer, where the shipping cockpit is extensively used in EWM to handle the staging, which is a big and can be a chaotic process. Everything from the consolidation to staging in lanes and doing consolidation in the lanes, and then the loading part. And all these things are orchestrated around the departure time coming out of TM. So EWM will plan towards that time. So mass goods issue and all the updates then flow up into ERP and also to the web front end if you have any order state or status updates going in that direction. So now we'll touch a little bit into the market.no success story, I would call. At the time, I was employed in this company as a developer. The project introduction was a requirement to come into e-commerce quickly and before everyone else. At that time, it was a new e-commerce platform, not to use the internal solution. From Complete Group's then existing SCE platform, we had to add on a TMS for a transportation management system and an event management system to do the tracking, and then an additional extra EWM warehouse setup. And all this was part of a very ambitious plan with the SI onboarded to do, in this case, Westernacher, to do the TM and EWM setup. And then internal resources for the EWM and ERP, ECC and PI part, all delivered in a extremely intense marathon of just 90 days, which is quite good, but the successes behind it is a good, clear plan at all levels, from business to system interactions to architecture and all these things. That's was the success criteria, and also a good relationship between all the teams working, in this case ECC, EWM, TM, EM, and then the web front end, of course, which is also an important part in relation to order integration. Here is just a small screenshot of the market.no as it looked at the time. Some quick highlighted facts about it. It was around 5,500 well-selected products on it. Looking towards the Norwegian market in this case of what people are requesting and buying from a high frequency, and have also a variety to offer the clients. High quality produce products like fresh fish and meat, bought on demand and cross-stocked in the last minute. Ready-made food was also created at the end. There was a kitchen with 4 chefs working during the night, sourcing from the warehouse, creating the ready-made food. You had the recipe packages. There's a lot of things. And of course, the web itself needs to be simple. You go in, you use your filter criteria or knowledge to navigate. It has to be fast, easy, and navigation and filtering has to be good. You add your shopping basket, you select your time slot. In this case, you do it at e-checkout, and then you pay for it. And then the order is executed. There was no reservation of shopping basket in this case, but there are trends in the market to basically go in and book your slot, start building your shopping basket, and then at some day at your freely select, you can then release it on your requested delivery slot. And the unique function at this time was the TM's integration to the web front end. I will try to use my mouse pointer, and you will hopefully can see it. If I now select a slot for tomorrow between 10 and 12, it could have some sort of price, which was set by the web front end, but the capacity of the transportation zones and the capacity of what you could deliver per zone, per date, per slot from to was controlled by TM by issuing a constant update for your orders coming in. You pushed out what was consumed in the slots to basically balance out, and the web front end to make sure that both systems are aligned in relation to capacity. So slot information was pushed out, how many capacities you had per slot, per zone, and always automatically 6 days forward in time. So delivery zones are in this case postal code defined. So TM is the master of defining the zones as well. There were also some geolocation zones for exclusion and inclusion. If you could not offer deliveries in your postal code range, you could be offered a pickup location. Also, to stimulate purchase, dynamic pricing was also introduced, so prices could go up and down depending on if there were orders in a particular slot. Like here also, this one is colored green for the reason that you want to do a environmental friendly indicator, so saying that there are orders in it, and might be that you also reduce the price. It's always control about what the competition of the market is. So this is also something people needs to consider coming into this. As I mentioned, the online interaction part was a important part to control your resources, to have one central instance to define the time slots and keep track of your availability and the capacity of the slots by using a very simple integration to the web front end. And as I mentioned, delivery zones, the resources also had special requirements because we were now loading them with totes, and some products like bags of toilet paper or dog food, which don't fit in a tote, were not considered during the volumetric calculation of what was able to be fit on the car. The car were loaded with racks. So the dimensions criteria from a volumetric perspective were all calculated from the boxes and bags through our formula. The calendar resources were also frequently used to not only control the vehicle's operating hours, but also the opening and closing hours for the pickup location, which is basically just a chilled container with a cabin crew on one side. Controlling the hours when they are allowed to be resourced and the hours when they are allowed to be used as a pickup location point, also considered by the web front end in that interaction. From the planning part, there are also from home delivery a big variance in requirements for fatigue, the brake patterns that needs to be introduced, because the drivers from some routes can be very long. It can be up to 7 or 8 hours, depending on how many stops which is planned. It spans everything from an average of 10, 15 to 20 stops to everything from 30, depending on the density of your locations that you're going to. The unloading locations are also over the years seen that we need to have a flexibility around that to enable, if you need to come to a client to do your unloading in the middle of the city where you park away from the apartment or the house, you can have an unloading duration of maybe 10 minutes, but in the outside of the city, when you are in a more dense area, it could be 5 minutes. If you are doing electronics consumer goods delivery, home delivery, it might be that you need to consider mounting a TV or taking things in returns like e-waste and all these value-added services, which then will extend your unloading duration. The optimization is also high volume, and it's can be done in different ways, considering a lot of criteria or the time slots themselves. We need to consider, in this case, the dimension of the boxes to handle a volumetric perspective, but you will reach, in most cases for home delivery of groceries, you will reach the load weight before you reach the volumetric max capacity. For market, it started with an automatic background planning where a resource or planner reviews the final plan before he pushes the delivery creation proposal and the TU transfer to EWM. At the end of the operation, it was all fully automatic. There was no humans touching it. From a dialogue, warehouse and planning execution perspective, fixed horizons were used, what we called AM and PM delivery windows. So all orders spanning from the morning up to 12 o'clock are AM. They are planned first, and warehouse execution takes them first because they are the ones leaving first. And then PM comes later on so that the warehouse can fulfill them. And starting from 12, you can decide which cutoff times you want to have for this. But this was a filtering criteria technique introduced in this project and has been reused in other home delivery projects that I've been attending in to have that in as a filtering criteria. The delivery zones also needs to be considered to be built smart, enabling vehicles to be assigned to that area so you don't go across or across fjords or routes which consume time. It has something to do with the density of your optimized result. The exact distances and duration calculations is also important because we want to push, in this case, the planned arrival time to the customer via SMS. If you order a 4-hour time slot and you can say that's between 8 and 12, and you can say that I will arrive after 11, it's a very good provider of visibility to the client. As I mentioned, there is an option to do the mass delivery creation proposal from TM to ERP if you're using the sales order as a planning object, and you do the delivery creation from TM after you're done with your planning. Or you can do it having deliveries created directly when sales order come in, or the direct delivery option in EWM will change that design. But in this case, it was a delivery proposal from TM to ERP. And the transportation unit are created also manually, if you like, or automatically, which then will push down the load sequence, the departure time, and all the things that is needed for EWM. Also the vehicle information and the means of transport, which can be used to handle priority elements, express orders, or normal flows. Vehicle information is used also to adapt if you have a lot of vehicles in your own fleet. For example, you want to understand what you need to preload and park in a designated area ready for leaving because you're loading through a lot of gates. That is useful information. For the ones that are not familiar with with TM as a planning tool or the transportation cockpit, this is what it looks like. It is basically 4 screens. This is your transportation demand. Now here showing the time slots from and to, and also our work weekday was also introduced to have visibility when you're looking ahead in time to see what your demands are. These are your resources. This is just a map screen to illustrate the transportation areas of the market NO operation, which are in the Oslo dense areas. And then you have one transport zone here and one transport zone on the west and east side of the fjord. And these ones are not compatible to cross. So they are considered as their own zones, and the same with the Oslo area. So this is what a transportation cockpit can look like with a map enabled. In this screen, you see the routes with the stops and the travel time between the locations. Coming back to the track and trace part, EM is for this project heavily used. There are other options to deploy this today, as this was created some years back. But EM is a good solution to handle elements and everything from events to unexpected events to reactive events that can do other functions calls to other systems. In this case, the workflow application of the driver app will communicate when you arrive at a customer, when you start your navigation, when you leave the warehouse, going to the first customer. You could have a non-delivery, of course, exceptions, POD on behalf of the customer. You deliver on the doorstep and take a picture and you leave, or you deliver everything. You can have a deliver action where substituted items are rejected. You need to take returns back. So you can issue events for that. And also the heads up notifications can also be leveraged and triggered through EM. And that means that the driver can initiate while he's navigating, when he's about 15 minutes away from the customer, pushing a button, enabling the system to call an SMS gateway, pushing an SMS saying that we are arriving in 50 minutes, which is a useful pre-advised warning to make sure that there are someone home. And as I mentioned, and also Alexander has touched by the age verification or the restrictions around alcohol and tobacco, it will vary from country to country. And you will have also the non-delivery situations coming up where parts of the products ordered needs to be taken out because you cannot deliver to this young person below the legal age in some cases, so you need to take things back. So all the milestones from the driver app are reported here, and of course also some from EWM from the actual departure of the truck and all these events. I will also come back to the system. The GIS component, as I mentioned, it is something you need to have. You are doing street level routing. The map on your left side illustrates routes in the Oslo city area on a day some years back. Every color is one truck driving around doing deliveries. And you are depending on that street level routing to have an accurate arrival time. Some of the GIS solutions today here was selected in this case as the best solution. It considers traffic patterns. You can also use the navigation part in the driver app where you consider road time traffic, because then you are more closer to the real-time action of what's going on at the bigger roads. We need the geolocation of the customer, first of all. The web can also use it in case they want to do some statistics, but from TM we need to have it. And the distance duration calculations are important. And the visualizational map is the component that you're looking at on your left screen. So that can also be used, where you can also show the vehicles via TM also if you have a GPS in your device, or if you have a fleet tracking, you can also get things visible in the map in case that is something you want to leverage. And then we have the driver app. The screens that you're seeing are a couple of years old, but they work in the same way. You see here on the left a manifest. The driver app, as I said, we are relying on students doing afternoon runs and in the whole operation. So this is a workflow guidance tool for the employee to start navigation, go to the first customer, do unloading, scan the items in the back of the truck, go to the doorstep, do the delivery or non-delivery or POD on behalf, or handle damages, empties, returns, and all these things. Here is a screen of the sequence. You will come from the manifest and you go into the manifest and then in. If I can take the next slide, it's easier to explain. So it started with a manifest, and you can press the one that you want to go to first, which is the sequence 1. You press the navigate to customer, and you then start your navigation tool, launch navigation, and then you can exit out. You arrive at the customer, which is then statistically logged towards the planned arrival time. You will never come before. If you come before, you agreed with the customer up front because you are in the area faster than calculated. You will come either at the same time or after. And this time and arrival event can be used to run KPIs to analyze the quality of your delivery demand. And when you come into the actual unloading, you will be represented with the handling units of the totes in this case. It can be divided into the vehicle in an ambient area or chilled area, where chilled and frozen are stored together. Frozen normally do not exceed more than 2-3% of a shipment on a car. And you basically slide off or scan the tote IDs, or read them and slide with your fingers, or the scanner handles that one to confirm that you picked everything, so that you don't under-deliver when you are preparing and going to the customer's doorstep. And then you come back to the manifest again, and you take the next sequence.
Right.
Alexander,
thank
I'll
you
hand it over to you.
for all the details and examples, and the success story that we had with Complete a few years ago. So based on this and other project experiences, we have created a number of different packages that we can offer today. And in the smallest package, this is really your what we call the minimum viable product. Is everything that you need to go live in 10 to 15 weeks. It includes a simple driver app, so parts of what Tom just showed at the end. It includes the delivery slots, return ability for returns, GIS integration, batch planning, and much more. Things that are not included are value-added services management, control tower, a collaboration platform. So that's a little bit less there. In the medium package, this is more functionality, mostly directed to allow better customer service. We offer this package to be implemented in 15 to 25 weeks. And obviously everything from the small package, but then additionally some more advanced delivery windows, track and trace capabilities, and third-party integration. So this is obviously also very important if you don't run your home delivery service with your own assets, with your own drivers, your own trucks, and so on. And then a large package that basically allows you to become an industry leader in 25 to 40 weeks. Everything again from the medium package, but much more advanced, as well as express handling, stock transfers, and full transportation settlement automation. So especially this is especially important if you deal with a lot of third-party fulfillment help. And beyond that, we also can do obviously individual packages that, while we call them XL, might not necessarily be even bigger than a large package. But this is where we create an individual plan together with you, and we include the things that are important from your perspective. Now, how do we approach this? We suggest as the first step to have what we call our innovation day. We want to get to know you, we want to hear your ideas, and we want to inspire you. So this is all about understanding expectations, setting expectations, and understanding how we can balance, for example, an implementation speed over a scope, and get to a solution that really fits your needs. We would then prepare an implementation approach that takes us probably around 2 weeks, and then we could start the implementation and go live, for example, with our small package in 10 to 15 weeks. And then we can go and improve on that, move from a small package to a larger package, more functionality, or include more zones, more regions, more products, more services, whichever way you want to move from then on. And with this outlook, we're basically at the end of our presentation. Very good.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody, for attending our webinar. I hope that you can take some important information away, and we'll look forward to speaking with you directly in hopefully the near future. Thank you and have a great day.